As you are preparing to practice conversations with teachers about evidence collected during an observation, I encourage you to choose a colleague whom you trust and practice with them. Notice the guidelines for minutes that you should spend on each section. These are approximations, but feedback during field testing indicates that these are helpful guidelines to follow so that you spend time on the important sections of determining next steps and action planning with the teacher. All too often, it is reported that without intentionality in getting to that part of the conversation, you can spin your wheels just talking about reviewing the lesson and what was noticed. That does not lead to teacher growth. You must learn to facilitate their thinking toward the success criteria, what it will look like and sound like to get there, and what actions they intend to make along the way. That is the key to cultivating professional growth and teacher efficacy. Reviewing our learning pathway, we see that you are ready to put together the skills you've learned in order to plan for meaningful and productive professional growth conversations. Let's remember the system we considered earlier, one in which the professional growth plan drives the learning and is focused on a commitment to growth instead of just compliance to a regulation. Take another look at it from an individual's perspective. The teacher, in collaboration with the principal, determines the areas of the framework in which their professional growth would most impact their students' learning experiences. They use multiple sources of data to determine where they are on the rubric currently. Then, through evidence gathering, not only during classroom observations, but including other sources of evidence as well, they can more accurately align the evidence to the framework and make decisions about what they will learn and practice next in order to continue to grow toward the desired level of effectiveness. Notice that this level of implementation doesn't necessarily take more time. You are still spending the same number of minutes in the classrooms collecting evidence. You are still spending the same number of minutes in post-observation conversations. Professional growth plans are still being written and reviewed. The difference is in the intentionality of focus and growth. Use the QR code to the right or access the post-observation reflection conversation protocol through your learning platform. Notice in Section 1, we begin with the connection to the teacher's PGP and include the positive presupposition that the teacher is thinking about the impact they are having on students as well as thinking about their own learning. Notice also the tentative language. What are your hunches connected with a positive experience during the lesson, with an intentional push on what went well according to how that aligns with the framework. Starting with these positive presuppositions and offering time to reflect on what went well first builds rapport and begins to decrease stress. After building rapport for the first 1 or 2 minutes, the conversation transitions to the data and evidence and their ideas and identification for areas for continued growth. This section also offers an opportunity for the observer to state a noticing in the observation evidence that they might want to guide towards in order to allow for the teacher to begin problem solving through thinking out loud. The next part of the conversation guides the teacher to the third point, the framework, in order to further describe indicators for future success and the types of evidence that might be appropriate to capture. Notice also the push towards identification of student success as a result of teacher practice. There is a star on this slide to indicate the importance of reaching the action planning and commitment stage of the conversation. Notice that more time is allocated here than any other part of the conversation. There's an intentional focus on continued learning and planning for difficulties and perseverance. You might also choose to ask about collaboration opportunities with colleagues. Then this next section guides the conversation through thinking about many types of support that the teacher may be considering and how those experiences might impact professional growth, specifically toward the goal. Closing the conversation around using strengths to accentuate growth and asking for feedback on the conversation itself builds trust and exemplifies the idea that we are all learners and focused on growth. The final suggested question is intended for the principal to hear what the teacher thought were the most important parts of the conversation. This is important feedback as well and should be noted. You will use the information from this conversation not only to inform other aspects of the teacher's practice, but also for you to prepare for the next observation so that you can build on what has already been started. When teachers are empowered, feedback becomes the inspiration for learning and reflecting. Instead of evaluation being a gotcha system, it can become one of, I've got you. I want to empower you to be your best self, and I want to find the best ways to do that. Let's learn together. Now, let's consider again our guiding question for this module. What skills and strategies did you learn and are inspired to try? How will you empower teachers to grow in levels of effectiveness? I would love to hear from you and receive your feedback about what works and what you're struggling to implement. My contact information is provided on the screen.